let's go back to the beginning and talk about really what is the main issues with Egypt and the Copts. So what I'd like to do is a quick rundown of the year in review, as it were, and especially kind of home in on new trends, developing trends in the persecution, because they always have something new and exciting for us stored. First of all, of course, is more of the usual that we get, which is the mob uprising, anger, violence, attacks, and the most recent one, if you go on the Coptic Solidarity website, which I write for, the most recent one I think was 2 weeks ago, somewhere in Minya, where they burned Coptic homes, and they were angry because a Coptic man, I think he got a permit to put some sort of mobile apparatus on his roof, and all of a sudden that triggered them. And it triggers them, of course, because somehow he's trying to improve himself, he's trying to be better than them. It actually goes back to Sharia, where there's stipulations about a Christian can't have a house higher than a Muslim's house. And if you even doubted that that was a religious uprising, the Muslims made sure to scream out Allahu Akbar. All right, so it was definitely they were underscoring the religious aspect, obviously. And what was actually good about that, if you've seen that particular one, the one I'm talking about from about 2 weeks ago, I forget the name, someone can tell me if they know the name of the city, I think it's in Minya. But someone videotaped it, a woman videotaped it, I guess with her phone, and you can hear the terror in her voice and how just utterly traumatizing this entire event is as she watches her property burn, as she watches Muslim men, women, and children screaming and looting and stealing.
حكومة ايه بس؟ حكومة جت بعد ما بهدلوا الدنيا.
بعد ما خلصت. بعد ما خلصت ولاد الحرام. بعد ما خلصت.
الحقونا أرجوكم. أرجوكم. بهدلوا الدنيا وكسروا البيبان.
And so I think it was when you read a lot, as I do, and you probably do, and you encounter these stories, and they become just very kind of dry and factual. But in this particular case, I found it very interesting because you could hear the woman's terror, and that's how they all are. We just don't get that because we usually just read a small story about it. So anyway, that's the Muslim mob uprisings are still alive and well. And then, of course, the entrenched discrimination. So for example, past Easter, I think Holy Week, Easter week, 1 or 2 of those days, universities made it a point to schedule exams, even though those are Christian holidays. And then, of course, conversely, when Ramadan was in effect, the whole school was shut down, all of them. And that caused problems. And the dearth of churches and the sort of overall discrimination was such that it caused yet another Coptic funeral to be held in the streets. Imagine people, because they're deprived of churches, they have to bury their loved ones in the street and have funerary rites in that kind of context. How demeaning, how degrading, but that's the point. So that sort of thing is alive and well. And another one of the new developments, of course, is Egypt appointed a new Grand Mufti. If you dig into his background, you find, of course, one of his famous books, I think the equivalent of a dissertation from his academic background, is an attack on Christianity, the Trinity specifically. And the short and long of the whole book is that Christians are ultimately kuffar. So this is the Grand Mufti of Egypt, which tries to put on a moderate face. And this man, behind the scenes, has written a treatise about how the Christians, the Copts, are kuffar, are infidels. And as you know, if you are labeled a kafir, that immediately puts you on the role of you're an enemy. You're someone who's to be fought, discriminated, subjugated, and kept down. So that's the new Grand Mufti. And speaking of course, Al-Azhar also this past year published a book republished the book, rededicated entirely to destroying churches in Egypt. The thesis is that churches have no belonging in Egypt. And it was written by some sheikh from maybe 200 years ago, but they reissued it and republished it with a new introduction and a new foreword. And keep in mind, Al-Azhar is who Pope Francis would meet with Ahmed al-Tayyib, Sheikh Ahmed al-Tayyib, before he passed away. And they would hug and kiss and talk about fraternal love, et cetera, and this is what they're doing behind the scenes. So this is the reality of it. But of more interest, and lately, so some sort of new trends that we can mention, is, if I reflect on it, because I've followed this particular topic for so long, is attacks on churches in Egypt. and all throughout the Muslim world, but in Egypt specifically, were very common, as you know. I mean, of course, historically, we can go back and talk about thousands of churches being attacked, but in the modern era, I believe Megdi has given the number, Megdi Khalil has given the number of thousands of churches since the modern era, let's say in the 60s, okay, in the 70s, have been attacked in one way or the other, many of them torched. And we're all familiar with this, and there's always, whatever the pretext is, Muslims uprise and attack churches for whatever reason, but something like maybe 5-6 years ago, it stopped, and it was nice, and you thought that was good. And then all of a sudden, it started again with more churches burning, but in this time, every single one of them is an accident. And you don't see Muslims rioting, and you don't see anything. It just happens. So the conclusion is either something nefarious is happening, it's business as usual, but under a new guise, a more subtle guise, or the Coptic people are the most fire-prone accident people on the face of this earth. Even though you would think they'd want to be very careful with their churches because their churches are so embattled and few in number, apparently of all the people in the world, they just can't, they keep making fires in their churches. So I don't know which sounds more plausible to you. And but to help understand the meaning of it, keep this in mind also. Mosques and prayer halls, which outnumber Coptic churches in Egypt by 60-to-1 ratio, are seldom ever catch fire or burn. So maybe in Egypt, even the circuits and the faulty wires are radical too. I don't know. And they're burning churches. The reason I actually want to point this out is because it seems like the sort of radical attacks and that sort of thing are becoming more sophisticated. Instead of waiting on the rabble to do it and then exposing yourself, I don't know, are these the authorities? Are they in cahoots with the radical sheikhs? What's going on? And so in 1 month alone, I think in 2023, when this issue started, 9 or 10 churches burned in one summer. And in one of them, 41 Copts were burned alive. And since then, the most recent one, I think, was 10 days ago, another church. And then before that one was maybe 2-3 weeks, another church in Egypt. And before that was maybe 3 weeks. So this is an ongoing thing. There's more, churches are burning now more than when actual jihadists and Islamists would rise up against them. And it just, makes you wonder, it just shows you how I think things are becoming a little more clandestine and sophisticated. So the other one is actually the abduction of women that we've heard a lot about, the abduction, Islamization, etc. When you really think about it, that too, like the ongoing burning of churches, which has become more subtle and more sophisticated, has really taken on a very sophisticated, almost systematic way of being done. And I think also it includes authorities and all these different rings that focus, and it's become an art, is my point. These things are becoming so subtle and so much more systematic, and obviously have a hand, I would argue, from the authorities. One of the things that I think is very important to keep in mind, when you talk about all these things that we're talking about, the abduction of the women, and you think about the authorities and the police and the governor, and you wonder, like, why are they acquiescing? Why do they cooperate? Why do they turn a blind eye? And I think what we have to remember and keep in mind is that from their worldview, they're all the good guys. What they're doing is actually good. When they abduct a girl and they forcibly Islamize her, in their mind, this is good. They're altruistic. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, because if you don't, you think that what they're doing is so evil in their mind, and how do they have the conscience to do this? But they actually have a clear conscience. And that's why maybe the policeman knows that this girl was abducted, but he's going to turn a blind eye, because this is better for her. She's going to become a true Muslim and not have to live as some foul infidel, okay? Or even in the Pakistani example, where they had the police authority saying, inshallah, God willing, she won't go back to her parents. Because in his mind, because now she's a good Muslim, she doesn't have to go back to being a kafir who's going to hell. I always think this is an important element to keep in mind, and it's a sad element, because it underscores why this issue is going to be so pervasive, because you're dealing with the people who are doing something negative, but in their minds, they're the good guys. So that's obviously very problematic. But the last thing I'll talk about, which again is also one of these new subtle sort of trends, except it blew up in their face, is the St. Catherine Monastery, which is very recently, just happened May 29th. So May 29th, ironically, is when the news came out that an Egyptian court had ruled that St. Catherine Monastery, which is the oldest functioning monastery in history, which has been there functioning with monks since about a century before Muhammad was born and Islam came into play, and which is a UNESCO protected site, which means this site belongs to humanity as a cultural heritage. It doesn't belong to any one particular country. And Egypt on May 29th decided, no, this is our land and we can do whatever we want. And, at least the Greek government and the Greek patriarchs and the religious hierarchy really got angry and responded. And many people don't understand, but his name is, I think, Patriarch Hieronymus. What's that? Yeah, the Patriarch of Athens and all Greece. And he made a remark and he said, I can't believe today of all days, orthodoxy is being attacked again. And his point, of course, is May 29th, when this new information came out, is when another great Orthodox cathedral was attacked and taken over by Muslims, which is the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. And they're both built by Justinian in the 6th century, and they're both UNESCO cultural sites. And there's one in Turkey, and again, Turkey took it over and turned it into a mosque again, after it had been a museum. And even though Istanbul has 3,000 mosques, apparently they need one more. And now Egypt is doing the same thing. But of course, after this backlash, Sisi came up with some kind of proclamation basically saying, no, nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to change, it's the same status quo. But according to some people, that's all lies, and this is just, he's trying to diffuse the situation and just cover it up and go away. And apparently what he's trying to do, it's another move to help improve the image of Islam in Egypt, the overall Islamization of Egypt. If you're unaware, under Sisi, he's creating what's called Islam City, or Islam Mission City, which is a major city dedicated just to the teaching and propagating of Islamic religion. I don't know, where is it, New Cairo? It's somewhere, it's on massive ground and lots of acres, and they're building it, and it's gonna give scholarships to Muslims from all around the world, and they're gonna come and be indoctrinated from Al-Azhar and then unleashed on the world to go back to their land. So definitely there's this Islamization program going on with Sisi, and I think this St. Catherine thing fits in it, because what he'll probably do is he'll keep the monastery as a monastery. It's old, it's dilapidated, but he's going to surround it with the glories of Islam, and so it will be a reminder that yes, this cathedral, or St. Catherine Monastery, is representative of the old religions, Judaism, Christianity, Moses, Christianity, etc. And then it's going to be surrounded with the glories of new Islam, the final revelation. So that's probably up his sleeve, and that's what he's trying to do. And, I guess the only good news is this, because that church is it's not run by the Copts. The world actually heard about it and cared, because it's more of a European Greek Orthodox thing, and they made enough noise to embarrass him. So we'll see where that goes. But overall, that's, I think, what's been going on is, this kind of trend where the same sort of radicalization exists and the same sorts of problems, but they're becoming a lot more sophisticated. The church thing where I'm telling you they just catch fire constantly. You can even see surveillance tapes where a candle is just sitting there and then it blows up. And apparently, so maybe, are they selling them candles that are booby-trapped or something to that effect? I've never seen a people who have so few churches, but they keep having accidental fires in them constantly. And that's been a big thing in the last 2 years, especially this year. Like I said, this year it seems every 3 weeks there's a new one. So that's the current situation in Egypt, and what we're all talking about and what we're all trying to ameliorate, and that's where it's at right now. And I think that's the fact that it's becoming a little more subtle, both in the church issue, and because these have always been the big issues, is the church issue and the women issue, the abduction issues, and they're both taking on a much more professional guise. And I think that's by design and intention, and it's a lot more dangerous. And, again, keeping in mind that in their minds, they're the good guys. They don't think they're doing anything wrong. They think it's kind of, to them, the end justifies the mean. And the end is, I've made this person a good Muslim, or I've gotten rid of an infidel church. So the means, which are of less than just, kind of just, they just look them over.
استغاثة رئيس الجمهورية مصر بلد الأمن والأمان. شايف بيحصل لنا ايه؟ شايف بيحصل لنا ايه؟ شايفين بيحصل لنا ايه يا بلد؟ اتبهدلنا وبيتنا اتبهدل وكل حاجتنا اتبهدلت. بيتنا كله اتكسر بسبب شوية هيئة. يا مصر يا بلد الأمن والأمان انقذونا. انقذونا انقذونا ارجوكم ارجوكم انقذونا 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 هنموت 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 بهدلونا 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 الحقونا الحقونا ارجوكم ارجوكم الحقونا ارجوكم ارجوكم الحقونا استغاثة 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 هنموت هنموت الحقونا الحقونا منشية الحاصلية منشية الحاصلية بهدلوا بيتنا وكسروني كسروا كل البيت البيبان والسلوك والشبابيك سببوش حاجة لما كسروني الشرطة واقفة مش عارفة تعمل أي حاجة الحقونا أرجوكم أرجوكم الحقونا هنموت أرجوكم
اوعى عشان ما تطفيش طوب يجي فيكي اوعى الطوب يجي فيك هيعور
حاضر 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 يا بنتي شيروا اللايف شيروا اللايف لكل الناس لو سمحت شيروا اللايف لكل الناس تيجي تلحقنا منشية الحاصلية والبهدلة اللي احنا فيها بيت اسحاق ابو عياد ارجوكم الحقونا
اوعى الطوب
حرامية حرامية حكومة ايه بس حكومة جت بعد ما بهدلوا الدنيا
بعد ما خلصت
بعد ما
بعد ما
بهدلونا
خلصت ولاد الحرام بعد ما خلصت
الحقونا ارجوكم ارجوكم بهدلوا الدنيا وكسروا البيبان كسروا كل حاجة ما خلوش حاجة في البيت كسرونا يا رب يا رب يا رب يا رب يا رب ارحمنا يا رب الحقنا يا رب يا رب يا ماما يا أمي يا أمي يا ماما قومي يا ماما يا ابني الحق لأمك يا ابني الحق لبسنا يا ابني
يا جماعة
أمي الدنيا ما بتموتش شيلها شيلها بسرعة شيلها بسرعة زمان يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا ماما يا ماما
قومي ما تعمل
قومي
قلت طب كده
قومي
كده
جلال
500
قومي
اسمعي فوق طيب
يا بلد شايفين عملوا فينا ايه؟ شايفين؟ بدلوا بيتنا كل حاجة
شوف امك بس
بدلوا بيتنا كل حاجتنا ده لازم يتوصل